It's Dr. Richard Mclean again, coming to you from my YouTube channel. Look, today I got a message from the further oppression. Was that the police? No. From Kate Watson. Now, Kate Watson is a government lawyer who's defending Comcare that I wasn't an employee of the NDIA when I was framed and suffered an injury regarding my workplace. Now, Kate has sent some information through to the AAT. It's a heinous cover-up. It's perverse justice. She's not supposed to act without legal privilege, and she knows full well that I'm a marginalised person who hasn't got representation. Further, Fennell of the AAT, the member, is racing it forward with full knowledge that that I am framed, and that comes from the Prime Minister, Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet himself. What they send is a desperate plea to rob me of prosperity. She's obviously begged someone at Services Australia to ask if I'm an employee. Anyway, they've done that, and further, I've written a letter back to them, and I want to say it to you all now. So I say, "Hi, Alison." So I sent it to Kate, who's the lawyer for the government. She actually informs government policy, and the government is actually suing me, and the Prime Minister of Office and Cabinet rejects that he even knows who I am. That's despite being a human rights awarded author and advocate, and advocating for people for over 25 years. So I sent a letter to this person from Services Australia. You recently received an email from Kate Watson, a high-ranking lawyer from the government who is a 25-year advocate for a particular section of government insurance for Comcare in the SRC Act. She informs government policy. I noticed that she's really scraping the bottom of the barrel. You say in your response to her, "Hi, Alison, let me know, hi, Kate, let me know if the below is all right." The intonation is that Kate has asked for evidence to demonstrate that I am actually not registered on the system, being involved in SAP or on the system somehow, and includes salary, leave, and other payroll information. This is to support her part in the conspiracy to pervert justice in order to destroy me. And it has. I've literally got nothing. No food, no medication. I'm squatting. It's worked. Well, I was dead. This is 15 months ago in a public hospital, which then the government covered up. I was victim blamed for wanting to die, although this systemic government oppression had gone on for years. So even though I have a brain injury now, which WorkSafe and Comcare are large contributors to, I have enough to complete this email in evidence. It is exposing the hypocrisy and the vicious and conscious slander and libel of me, and the catastrophic character assassination that has seen my conspiracy to manslaughter, only not murder because I was accidentally found and revived, and then its further cover-up by the very government that caused it. The maliciousness is systemic through local, state and government agencies. You see, Kate is a soulless wench, I say, prostituting herself with all the soul depth and emotional depth of a credit card. You just played right into what she's trying to do unwittingly. That is, trying to prove that for the purposes of the SRC Act and a particular tiny bit of the legislation, that I'm not eligible for workers' compensation via Comcare, the national insurer for the NDIA, for who I work, or did work. In fact, I've been framed, and you are unknowingly playing a game which has catastrophic consequences for Kate. Sorry, Kate, it does. This is because I've suffered a psychological injury because of my work relating to a rejected child sexual abuse case that was my own, and that I have been framed as many things. This is in no way more evident than a formally celebrated than as a formally celebrated nationally human rights awarded autobiographer and human rights campaigner who spent 25 plus years advocating for marginalised people with altruism. And I've actually spoken in Parliament, to Dubbo, to Warrnambool, to Montreal, all the radio and TV stations. There's a Wikipedia page after me, which I edited because I was vain. And my role as an illustrator and artist for both the Herald Sun and the Age, who both acted with the conspiracy to fire me. And I've been labelled with many mental health issues for which I've been prejudiced, persecuted, fired, blah, blah, blah. That includes serious illnesses. However, I persevered and attained a doctorate in actually really what was mad and what was not. Clearly, I would be on the national registry, having had personal rejections from such people as Greg Hunt, MP Linda Reynolds, Dan Andrews, Mark Latham, Adam Bant, and many, many more. In fact, a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice is evident through the rejection of my FOI from the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet. After at first identifying, obviously, that my records were they were too voluminous and complex and would require time to unpack it all. And then they did a complete 180 a few months down the line after they delayed, deferred, denied, and said that I don't exist. That's strange, considering my case with the AAT and other federal agencies, and also considering my former partner, who admitted to me he was present at a murder and embezzled $1.2 million in an offshore tax haven, and that he still owes me a legal, equitable, and amicable settlement of probably $500,000. That would see me out of the detriment. It's also weird that the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet doesn't have a record of me, because the National Health Minister, Greg Hunt, actually silenced evidence that could be heard before a court in terms of a malpractice case. But as the GP's lawyer was Russell Ball of Ball and Partners, he's a powerful man who's an A1 lawyer, 40 years experience, who informs government policy. And he also sits on the legal bar. So it's no wonder I could not find anyone in order to advocate for myself legally in the way that he asked to be addressed. That's because of a catastrophic character assassination, for which I have evidence of Mr. Ball slandered me to internally government agencies, to the Health Complaints Commissioner, Mental Health Complaints Commissioner, APRA, NHPOPC, the Victorian Police, the Federal Police, IBAC, and the Victorian Inspectorate as a extortionist. This is at odds with reality, because I worked incredibly hard to try and just get an acknowledgement that happened, and I was extremely reluctant to go to APRA. And at the same time, my old landlord, Mark Eng, gave me $100,000. This is because my former partner left me dying alone with his dying dog and squatting in a house in Footscray while he moved on to his next victim. This preposterous... Oh, and I gave the money back because he said it was a mistake. I gave it back. This preposterous movement is rendering to aid and abet my death and happened for years. And it set me up to aid and abet my death via attacking me via proxy in the money. And that ended in my vagrancy, the end of my work, and my suicide attempt in Werribee Mercy Hospital in February 2021. The Freedom of Information from that time says it was a fatal attempt and a lethal injury. In 15 months, since losing the entirety of my blood and being found unresponsive with no observable pulse and revived from a certain death, I've barely seen help. That's 15 months on, and Kate at the representing the government and the AAT are going against the Charter of Human Rights for people with a disability in that, firstly, I don't understand what the issue is, and additionally, that I've suffered incredible detriment, and further, that is still going on with public officials and people of legal power and privilege who are exploiting me as either too mad, not mad enough, too clever, or not clever enough. Whatever it is, I'm either mad or not too mad, and every public service official and PSA under the Public Act has to act within the Charter of Human Rights of people with a disability, and I have a brain disorder now. That is because I've lost all my blood and it's affected my hippocampus, and because and the Human Rights Charter says we must be dignified, we must not be exploited, we must have equality before the law, we must have access to the law, we must not be prejudiced, discriminated against, and we must not be subject to torture. And it has been systemic gaslighting, torture for years and years. And further, it's included an incredible amount of detriment. Now, I didn't know this, but I was being set up all along. At the Australian Human Rights Commission, I had a legal fight with I hadn't got a lawyer, so I went to the conciliation, and they free kicked over $1.5 million to the other team. And that's not very fair considering they're an impartial body. At AFCA, they have 4 weeks to come to a determination via their own policy with determinations. And I lost over $1 to $2 million potential dollars at AFCA because I accused them of being conspiratorial. They absolutely were. HCF, I've lost $75,000, and I have evidence that CEO Sheena Jack is overseeing fraud and editing documents to her advantage. I've suffered so much more, but the people complicit with covering up that part of the initial complaint with the GP, originally years ago in 2017, include Jack Heath, CEO of SAME, MP Greg Hunt, the Health Complaints Commissioner, the Mental Health Complaints Commissioner Jennings, NHPOPC, the police, IBAC, the Victorian Inspectorate, and many others, including the Ombudsman. That is legitimate evidence to be heard before a court, and even if I was an extortionist, which I'm not, that would mean that the evidence is out there anyway, and the malpractice is clearly exposed. The reach of my former partner, Stefan with an E, or Stefan with an A, Icenides, influence as being a former life partner of mine of 5 years, where we were all engaged, and a worker of ASIO, is very, very strong. And connections with wealthy people at ASIO that protect people with money, power and privilege, and gave him a slap on the wrist in exchange for jail time for a $1.2 million tax fraud. He sold that house while I was with him, and he made the house from the sale of cocaine. And he sold it, and he greedily squirreled it away in an offshore tax haven and was protected by people with money, privilege and power, in opposition to me, who is easy to exploit, frame and vilify. It's amplified by the libel and slander of Mr. Ball, Dr. Whittaker's lawyer, that was imposed on me to the internal government agencies as an extortionist, for which I only found out about through Freedom of Information from APRA after my murder/manslaughter. I'm not an extortionist or a rapist or a pedophile. Nothing is further from the truth. Like I said before, at the same time, I gifted back $100,000 to Mark Eng, who was a person where Steve and I used to rent the house from, and he gave me the cash because he accidentally found out about my advocacy and he had some issues the same as himself, and he wanted to invest in my situation. I don't know what went on there, but he asked for it back and I gave it back to him. My values are ethics, morality, and equity and equality. I deserve dignity, prosperity, to have access to the law, access to police, and have human value attached to me, and the value of very human worth and dignity, because I have sentience, I'm a free man, and I've, to my knowledge, not done anything wrong. Even if I've innocuously recorded something which led to this huge thing, and I found out that via the Surveillance Act 1999, it's an actually admissible thing. Now, APRA and Mr. Ball covered that up, and I actually cooperated. I thought, it mustn't be, and I wrote a transcript. Then they scribbled all over it. So in actual fact, the years-long oppression was based on nothing. There is actually the law which Mrs. Watson is abusing as her position as a legal principal officer. Member Furnell of the AAT, who is judging my case, which is most likely a TPD now, also acknowledged that I am at a disadvantage if I don't have an advocate or lawyer, as if that were not obvious anyway, because the government's literally already killed me. They're trying to sue me. They now have a 25-year experienced lawyer who is covering up the payment and rendering me bereft of finance and prosperity. And this is intelligently designed, systemically and maliciously, consciously and by choice, by agencies, and they expect the public and my friends and my family to follow through, because they exploit me on half-baked truths that are semi-believable, which are amplified in order to oppress and reject me. Now, she feels like she can do whatever she wants, doesn't she? That's kind of like the apology I got from the hospital, in which they apologised because I first tried to kill myself by snapping a toilet brush in half and slitting my artery open. And they gave the toilet brush back in my dirty clothes, in my clean clothes, a dirty toilet brush. And I got the response from the hospital, and it said, "We're sorry for gifting you a dirty toilet brush. It's not our policy to give back hospital property or gift it away." Now that's an amazing, atrocious amount of audacity, and the lawyer, Miss Watson, has that same thing. I don't think that's possible now. The Charter of Human Rights of People with a Disability was ratified by the government in 2008. It states that I must have equal and equitable access before the law, and I do not. It also states I must have simple things like a house, food, medication. Now, this is all happening because the government, having come so far in their deceit of protecting the rich, powerful and politically privileged, is too late to admit they killed me and then framed me before and afterwards, and then the government condoned it as nothing to see, and then they covered it up with the Ombudsman's blessing, and they hoped to aid and abet my death via vagrancy by providing drugs, rejecting me from medication, rejecting me from care, framing me through APRA and every GP, rejecting my health care, and in the whole 15 months since I literally violently bled out on the bottom of a loony bin floor in a shower, with the water running to not make a mess because I was considerate to the people who would find me, I have not seen one psychologist. I offered Finance Minister Birmingham an atonement of the millions and millions of dollars in detriment, but he actually intelligently omitted and consciously rejected me. I did the same thing for the Federal Police, but I'm blocked from their servers, like I'm blocked from the Federal Circuit Court of Australia. and like I'm hacked and things disappear on my computer and I'm exploited and probably being set up for either incarceration permanently or a crime that I haven't done. All my prosecution needs in the Federal Court of Australia is to demonstrate that 3 or more people participated in a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and this is via intelligently and consciously causing the detriment of another person, or acted via omission in order to pervert the course of justice. That has clearly happened beyond doubt already. It was for the sake of a monthly wage that I offered the finance minister an atonement for this incredible sin. I even offered a forgiveness of all the government and every single person, and that they would have no liability on my death or the conspiracy or the movement to oppress me, and that the mental health team, the crisis assessment team, would not have to admit that they were wrong in misdiagnosing me as psychotic, which they willingly knew, and that coincidentally I threatened to out Steve Ioannidis just days before that I was incarcerated. The doctor on duty, Dr. Kumar, I was a patient of 13 years earlier, and he knows of the threat of violence my former partner had over me. He knows that he worked for ASIO, and he knows that there were terrible, toxic partner relationships and money stuff going on. And Steve admitted to being present at the murder. I don't have evidence apart from when he sent me an email saying, well, where's your evidence? He got a bit angry and put his foot in it, didn't he? In fact, the release notes from the hospital back in February 2021 say that I am neither delusional nor psychotic, and I am grossly aware, and 0 psychosis was identified. Henceforth, the reason I was persecuted and oppressed for so long is because I was framed and because of the prejudice, stigma, and persecution of me as a well-known individual, and they were cutting me down, framing me as mad and psychotic when I really wasn't. I'm attaching some evidence, and you can see that evidence on the website killhim.info, for the benefit of Miss Kate Watson, who, although she thinks she's untouchable, and that a person with no food or medical care or medication and squatting at a home with barely an internet connection, she is actually lower than shark shit, aiding and abetting my death via continuing my vagrancy and acting with congruency like they all are, in the hope that I will die by my own suicide before the case is run and before I attain some prosperity. That Kate is lower than shark shit, and it is an abhorrent opposition to the conspiracy, to the Charter of Human Rights of People with Disability. It's outside of your remit as a responsible lawyer to take advantage of a person such as that. It is illegal. She, Kate Watson, is acting in resonance with a broader picture that renders me one thing. That's bereft of money. That's because even though I've been maliciously rendered a pauper and suffered a legitimate workplace injury complicated with a complex framing and character assassination, that if I got money and found a maverick lawyer, I could absolutely destroy her and a lot of people. It's unbelievable. This goes for the thousands of other people in the government, paid by the government to toe the party line, and they are also bound by the Charter of Human Rights and human rights, who as public officials or a PSA cannot act outside of that law. They have all broken the law. to demonstrate the detriment, quite basically, I'm a millionaire on paper, but I'm homeless. I have no food, money, or care. I owe detriment to people. I have been framed. My character has been ruined. I have cancer of 4 months and no oncologist or follow-up. I have mental health issues and no psychologist. This part of the situation is torture. That is an abhorrent discourse from the Charter of Human Rights of people with a disability. Not in 15 months after I was rejected unethically from the hospital in a taxi with no belt, to no home, no car, no job, no food, no money, and my father saying, pay your own rent, after successfully killing myself from government systemic oppression, I've not seen one psychologist. And in addition to that, family have jumped on the bandwagon, and I was victim blamed for wanting to die, and I was never acknowledged as the victim that I have been from this systemic oppression. And further, that the freedom of information, no one has alleged as an appropriate form of medical evidence that I would have a brain injury. Paul, I just wanted to say a magistrate from Geelong ruined my own child sexual abuse case from VOCAT as doomed to fail. That acted at the same time I was looking after my client who had child rape and incest issues, which triggered me. Now, WorkSafe did not advocate for me. Gee, that's a shame. Paul Fowler at Comcare, the insurer, rejected me under a part of legislation of the SRC Act, and he even has the diagnosis wrong in the official documents. Paul Fowler is the old boss and a lawyer at Comcare. I wrote to the Attorney General, Michaelia Cash, and pointed this out, and the setting up of a total multi-million dollars in detriment from the Australian Human Rights Commission and AFCA and Peter Fisher and Tim Goss at AFCA, who have published information on, and other agencies, Comcare, the AAT, ASIC, APRA, they all watched me burn, knowing very consciously where the chips lied, and they delayed, denied, and deferred, and they opposed the 4-week limit they had at AFCA to get a determination against their own policy, and they watched me burn both before hospitalisation, which ended in my suicide, and HCF rejected me at the same time because I had emailed both of them, and I begged for an outcome. They are corrupt. The Attorney General identified me as needing welfare. Well done, Attorney General, and sent me to the SANE helpline and lifeline. She refused to intervene as I asked her on the injustice issues that were happening in her portfolio, and she has, like the rest, identified me as a mad person. That is because of the war to destroy, of the will to destroy me, and pitiful people have believed the libel and slander or paid by forces to destroy me. And I want to say that I am a person of worth and sentience and human rights, and I deserve equal opportunity between the law. I don't deserve to be discriminated against, and I deserve access to police, and I deserve access to litigation, and I deserve food, care, water. You are all destroying me, and you're all watching it happen. This is allegorically attributing distress from being framed and with no food and no help, care or worth, with mental illness, when in fact what it is a political game of cat and mouse where the whole world is on one side, everyone with a vic.gov.au or a .gov.au, and my entire friends and family, and it renders me what is and can be described as a political prisoner. I am a scapegoat, and I am a person who is either too smart or too dumb or too mad or not mad enough. This is an abhorrent, vile victimisation of a once human rights awarded advocate, nationally celebrated author and artist who spent their whole life helping others, and I did that for 25 years. This movement have actually destroyed me financially, my job, my mind, my memory, and further, 15 months after, they are still, with the help and backing of my parents, my sister, who says I'm a druggo and schizo and get the fuck out of her life, and all my family and friends to aid and abet my death via robbing me of prosperity. That is because I've been framed as an extortionist. It is not true. I've been framed as a rapist. That is not true. Or pedophile, all sorts of things. They are trying every which way. Recently, 6 weeks ago, I was evicted. And the NDIA I've already written to, Minister Reynolds, will not be providing housing, although the NDIA can. And they condone me to Housing Services DHHS or DFFS. And they have already rejected my application, stating they don't provide housing options. I'm already on the housing register list. What is needed here, do you reckon, everyone? Do you reckon Richard needs a lawyer? Or do you reckon he needs welfare? Or is it a little bit of column A or a little bit of column B? Because if I had equity, justice, and legal equity and equality and a representation who is non-biased, with the evidence that I have collected, I could literally throw this election. In addition, MP Reynolds condones my vagrancy and then sends me to Services Victoria, who have already rejected my homeless appeal. And in addition to that, I've already got the person on VCAT saying that Hung Ho, that's his name, can now evict me with police and use a certain act of legislation. However, what access to legislation do I have? What happened to the Charter of Human Rights? What happened to equality before the law? What happened to not being framed? What happened to there not being a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice? What about the libel and slander that I've suffered? What about the systemic oppression and government destruction that led me to my own destruction, that aided and abetted my death or my manslaughter and was the cause of my injury? Greg Hunt believes having nothing to eat is not a health issue, it's for the NDIA, and the matter of the original doctor's case is still open because it still is. I can complain 6 years afterwards. He's not even registered with APRA, nor has he a valid ABN as a sole trader. I can't believe this. Maybe that's why they were trying to cover it up for so long. And further, Steve at the ATO, he's a Steven. There is no limit to what people will go to get away with murder. That GP case can still be heard. I wish to get legislation and litigation and equal access to the law. I have been rejected from hundreds of places. So, I just want to say that money's never been my currency. It's actually, I really find it hard to tell lies. I am an honest person, and my currency is truth, equity, and justice. Secular ethics is my religion beyond religion. I've said that Steve goes under aliases and stuff, and I've said that, you know, when I threatened that I'd out him for murder so I could get some payment from him, that he's messaged me on my website saying, "Where's your evidence? I'm going to dob you into APRA and AFCA and all that kind of stuff." Oh, Jesus. Anyway, the Federal Police have blocked me from their servers, so has Comcare and the Federal Circuit Court of Australia and the Family Circuit Court. I am a banned whistleblower at IBAC, who look after the Victoria Police, ASIC, who accepted my bankruptcy, should have never had to, APRA, and the Commonwealth Ombudsman. Further, I am banned from reporting to police. I cannot get a lawyer anywhere, anyhow, framed by Mr. Russell Ball and the people like Kate Watson, and I am a rejected whistleblower. Additionally, I have many failed cases with so many systemic organisations, including my business being ruined, VOCAT, VCAT, the Commonwealth Ombudsman, Fair Work, Comcare, every legal firm you can think of, Victoria Police, Fair Work Commission, the Australian Medical Review Board, Monash Law, no one will report me. I cannot report crime. But I just did. So framed am I that I cannot report rape, murder, tax fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, drugging, coercion, financial coercion, sexual coercion, theft of a car, theft of phone, many other crimes. Framed by the broader picture and the fact that I have a Services Australia profile with a number and that I received advance payments for COVID from the NDIA when I worked there, and I loved that job helping people. The NDIA says of workers explicitly on its website, workers. The NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission is an independent government body that will work to improve the quality and safety of NDIS supports and services and strengthen the skills and knowledge of workers, providers and participants across Australia. Who is a worker? Under the NDIS Commission, a worker is anyone who is employed or otherwise engaged to provide NDIS supports and services to people with disability, i.e. me. Workers can be paid or unpaid and can be people who are self-employed, employees, contractors, consultants and volunteers. Wow, sounds like I am worthy and dignified for a work cover case. This lawyer and the movement to oppress me is bound to fail, and they are all bound to eat their words, and I think maybe I'm bound to be framed and exploited, as I already have, for a crime I have not done, or be incarcerated as a mad person, an extortionist or whatever. But anyway, all the deceptions at the expense of my human value and dignity and my life and my brain, and the very torture of me and the rejection of my family and friends and everyone I know has been absolutely abhorrent to me, and I object to it. My name is Dr. Rich Mclean. I'm a Human Rights Award winning warrior. I'm a true speaker and seeker. I wonder how this lawyer thinks now, or this person who got the email from Kate Watson, to further the heinous victimisation of an innocent man. Because every single person is one stick in the faggot of oppression that kicked me on the head. And you know what? The office of Prime Minister and Cabinet, now, after saying that my freedom of information is too complex and voluminous, that I don't even exist. With this catastrophic amount of libel, slander and scapegoating, it's enough to make you sick. It's actually enough to make you want to kill yourself, wouldn't you think? That is my statement for today. I'm going off now. My dirty t-shirt and my squat, with no rights, no food, no advocacy, no help, my family exploiting me, my friends left me, and everyone, for some reason or other, has a reason to hate on me. And I tell you now, that if you kill me, there is already blood on your hands. And if you do kill me again, you can't take my soul. I'm not suicidal. You can't stop me from speaking my truth.